and here is my YouTube channel Zamir Universal. Genocide happening right in front of our eyes in Gaza, and look who is behind this genocide is the one who have been crying over Holocaust and asking for sympathy from the whole world, extracting billions of dollars from both Germany as well as from Switzerland, and lies mixed with some facts of cruelty which was inflicted on them by a dictator, Adolf Hitler. They have cashed that with museums, with publications, with the money they have, and nature is very cruel, but it's just. So expose them that what kind of human being these people and this group of people are. All of them obviously aren't. This may be one of those 10 tribes missing who defied Prophet Moses and the divine message and walked away. And he said, ask your God to come down and fight. Why should we? And I think these are the descendants of those lost tribes. The two tribes which remained with the Prophet are the real Orthodox Jews who are gentle, religious, kind, and are defying the state of Israel and its cruelty for the last 75 years or ever since its creation. And have been advocating that it's always the Muslims which provided us justice. They allowed us to worship at Al-Aqsa Mosque. They invited us back in Jerusalem, and they are the kindest people on earth, and we should live with them and not try and kill them and exterminate them and subject them to the cruelest possible atrocities, barbarisms, and that's what they have been doing to the Palestinian people for the last 75 years. At the International Court of Justice, South Africa took their case of genocide and I think very amicably presented their crimes and evidence of their heinous crimes and how the state thinks, and in particular a crazy man, and it's always somebody crazy like Adolf Hitler or Pharaoh or Namrud that's behind, or Halaku Khan, such atrocities, and that's Bibi Netanyahu and his supporters, financiers, and one of the worst person on earth is this Joey or Sleepy Joe or Joe Biden, the President of the United States of America. He is a killer himself. When there was any possibility of two-state solution, and Barack Obama had specifically told the Israelis to shut up and work on this and live in peace if you want to. And he, as assistant to Barack Obama, he reassured Bibi Netanyahu that this is all bullshit and I will not let two states ever happen. You continue with your settlements. And he is the one who sabotaged Hillary Clinton as the state secretary. And he played a dirty role ever since when he was a vice president of the United States at the term when he was with Barack Obama. So he is a known cheater, deceiver, hypocrite, the cruelest person. So he obviously had his blessing, his billions of dollars, and those dumb bombs to level the whole of 2.2 million people living in a small strip of land belonging to the Palestinian called Gaza. And the suffering of children, women, elderly, injured, and I think the list with one of the speakers who presented, especially the Irish lawyer, gave the details what damage they have done to the academia, to the universities, to thousands of students who are studying, thousands of patients who are in hospitals, and they stopped, they turned off the water supply so that people could just die of dehydration and lack of water, lack of hygiene, overflowing sewer, destroying their habitat, leveling all their houses, lands, agriculture, fields, olives, apples, fruits, bakeries, all medical stores, so that the injured could die slow death. Such a cruelty has never ever been reported in history of this globe. So you can imagine why these people were expelled from 79 countries and sometimes more than once, and why their graves are dug, why they are hated most people on earth. What amazes me is that they never ever do or pursue something in which they go in loss. This Netanyahu or Bibi Netanyahu is for the first time I am witnessing that he is strangulating his own Jewish people living in Israel with him to protect his own skin, his own corruption, and he is afraid of dying in jail. Imagine that ever since he has started to throw dumb bombs on Gaza and destroy the whole of North and make them move in such a mass migration to South with false promises that it's a safe place to go and then bomb South. And he's continuing to do that. It's over 100 days. And imagine, I will count one by one the misery and the damage he has done to the Jewish people living in Israel. So he is a dictator and he is not a leader, he is a criminal, murderer. Ever since this war started, the construction industry in the whole of Israel stopped because the labor for this construction company used to come from the West Bank. The poor Palestinians caged by them, occupied by them, and they used them as slaves and issued them work permits. So ever since that, so for 100 years, that's one big economic loss to the state of Israel. Then with bombs and missiles flying over from 6 different directions, Hezbollah from north and Hamas from Gaza and Houthis from south and from Golan Heights, Syria, and even the uprising in West Bank. All mass movements of people from their homes with sirens sounding every second to hide in shelters. There has been complete stoppage of tourists. There were no tourists coming up there, and all the hotel industry in Israel has been accommodating these people who moved away from the north border of 130 kilometers, and they moved away from West Bank settlements to save their lives, and this is going on for the last 100 years. Imagine the economic loss, and then the edible items in the stores stopped coming in because of the Houthis and Red Sea bombing and stopping all ships coming to Israel with any goods. It's all Bibi Netanyahu's doing, and obviously the money he is spending on his, not his own son or his own daughter or wife or himself, but the young boys and girls, children of the Israelis who.
But this court has the benefit of the past 13 weeks of evidence that shows incontrovertibly a pattern of conduct and related intention that justifies a plausible claim of genocidal acts. In the Gambia-Myanmar case, this court did not hesitate to impose provisional measures in relation to allegations that Myanmar was committing genocidal acts against the Rohingya within the Rakhine state. The facts before the court today are sadly even more stark, and like the Gambia-Myanmar case, deserve and demand this court's intervention. Every day, there is mounting irreparable loss of life, property, dignity, and humanity for the Palestinian people. Our news feeds show graphic images of suffering that has become unbearable to watch. Nothing will stop the suffering except an order from this court. Without an indication of provisional measures, the atrocities will continue, with the Israeli Defense Force indicating that it intends pursuing this course of action for at least a year. In the words of the UN Under-Secretary General on 5 January 2024, I quote, "You think getting aid into Gaza is easy? Think again. 3 layers of inspections before trucks can even enter. Confusion and long queues, a growing list of rejected items, a crossing point meant for pedestrians, not trucks, another crossing point where trucks have been blocked by desperate, hungry communities, a destroyed commercial sector, constant bombardments, poor communications, damaged roads, convoys shot at, delays at checkpoints, a traumatized and exhausted population crammed into a smaller and smaller sliver of land, shelters which have long exceeded their full capacity, aid workers themselves displaced, killed. This is an impossible situation for the people of Gaza and for those trying to help them. The fighting must stop." Close quote. Madam President, members of the court, that concludes my section on the genocidal conduct of Israel. I thank you for your patient attention, and I ask that you call Advocate Nukatobi to the podium to address the court on genocidal intent.
I thank Ms. Hassim, and I now invite Mr. Tembeke Nukatobi to address the court. You have the floor, sir.
Madam President and distinguished members of the court, it is a privilege to appear before the court on behalf of South Africa. I will address Israel's genocidal intent. At this stage, the court is not required to determine that the only inference to be drawn from the available evidence is genocide to order provisional measures, as that is to decide the merits. Rather, the assessment of the existence of an intent to destroy could be made by the court only at the stage of the examination of the merits. That some of the alleged acts may also amount to atrocities other than genocide does not exclude the finding of plausible acts of genocide. Madam President, South Africa is not alone in drawing attention to Israel's genocidal rhetoric against Palestinians in Gaza. 15 United Nations special rapporteurs and 21 members of the United Nations working groups have warned that what is happening in Gaza reflects a genocide in the making and an overt intent to destroy the Palestinian people under occupation. Israel has a genocidal intent against the Palestinians in Gaza. That is evident from the way in which Israel's military attack is being conducted, which has been described by Ms. Hassim SC. It is systematic in its character and form. The mass displacement of the population of Gaza, headed into areas where they continue to be killed, and the deliberate creation of conditions that, quote, lead to a slow death, unquote. There is also the clear pattern of conduct, the targeting of family homes and civilian infrastructure, laying waste to vast areas of Gaza, and the bombing, shelling, and sniping of men, women, and children where they stand, the destruction of the health infrastructure, and lack of access to humanitarian assistance. So much so that as we stand today, 1% of the Palestinian population in Gaza has been systematically decimated, and 1 in 4 Gazans.
Genocide is a denial of the right of existence of entire human groups, as homicide is the denial of the right to live of individual human beings. Such denial of the right of existence shocks the conscience of mankind, results in great losses to humanity in the form of cultural and other contributions represented by these human groups, and is contrary to moral law and to the spirit and aims of the United Nations, end quote. Notwithstanding the Genocide Convention's recognition of the need to rid the world of the odious scourge of genocide, the international community has repeatedly failed. It failed the people of Rwanda, it had failed the Bosnian people and the Rohingya, prompting this court to take action. It failed again by ignoring the early warnings of the grave risk of genocide to the Palestinian people, sounded by international experts since 19th of October of last year. The international community continues to fail the Palestinian people, despite the overt, dehumanizing, genocidal rhetoric by Israeli governmental and military officials, matched by the Israeli army's actions on the ground. Despite the horror of the genocide against the Palestinian people being live streamed from Gaza to our mobile phones, computers, and television screens, the first genocide in history where its victims are broadcasting their own destruction in real time in the desperate, so far vain hope that the world might do something. Gaza represents nothing short of a moral failure, as described by the usually circumspect International Committee of the Red Cross. As underscored by United Nations chiefs, that failure has, I quote, repercussions not just for the people of Gaza, but for the generations to come, who will never forget these over 90 days of hell and assaults on the most basic precepts of humanity. As stated by a United Nations spokesperson in Gaza last week, at the site of a hospital clearly marked with the symbol of the Red Crescent, where 5 Palestinians, including a 5-day-old baby, had just been killed. The world should be absolutely horrified. The world should be absolutely outraged. There is no safe space in Gaza, and the world should be ashamed. Madam President, members of the court, in conclusion, I share with you two photographs. The first is of a whiteboard at a hospital in northern Gaza, one of the many Palestinian hospitals targeted, besieged and bombed by Israel over the course of the past 3 brutal months. The whiteboard is wiped clean of no longer possible surgical cases, leaving only a handwritten message by a Médecins Sans Frontières doctor, which reads, "We did what we could. Remember us." The second photograph is of the same whiteboard after an Israeli strike on the hospital on the 21st of November that killed the author of the message, Dr. Mahmoud Abu Nujayla, along with 2 of his colleagues. Just over a month later, in a powerful sermon delivered from a church in Bethlehem on Christmas Day, the same day Israel had killed 250 Palestinians, including at least 86 people, many from the same family, massacred in a single strike on Maghazi refugee camp. Palestinian pastor Munzar Ishaq addressed his congregation and the world, and he said, and I quote, "Gaza as we know it no longer exists. This is an annihilation. This is a genocide. We will rise. We will stand up again from the midst of destruction, as we have always done as Palestinians, though this is by far maybe the biggest blow we have received." But he said, "No apologies will be accepted after the genocide. What has been done has been done. I want you to look in the mirror and ask, where was I when Gaza was going through a genocide?" South Africa is here before this court in the Peace Palace. It has done what it could. It is doing what it can by initiating these proceedings, by seeking interim measures against itself as well as against Israel. South Africa now respectfully and humbly calls on this honourable court to do what is in its power to do, to indicate the provisional measures that are so urgently required to prevent further irreparable harm to the Palestinian people in Gaza, whose hopes, including for their very survival, are now vested in this court.
I now invite the agent of South Africa, His Excellency, Mr. Vusumuzi Madonsela, to address the court. You have the floor, Excellency.
Madam President, remaining members of the group, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to the members of the group, C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. 5, the State of Israel shall, pursuant to point 4, paragraph C above, in relation to Palestinians, desist from and take all measures within its power, including the rescinding of relevant orders, of restrictions and/or prohibitions to prevent A, the expulsion and forced displacement from their homes, B, the deprivation of access to adequate food and water, access to humanitarian assistance, including access to adequate fuel, shelter, clothes, hygiene and sanitation, the medical supplies and assistance, and C, the destruction of Palestinian life in Gaza. Number 6, the State of Israel shall, in relation to Palestinians, ensure that its military, as well as any irregular armed units or individuals which may be directed, supported or otherwise influenced by it, and any organizations and persons which may be subject to its control, direction, or influence, do not commit any acts described in 4 and 5 above, or engage in direct and public incitement to commit genocide, conspiracy to commit genocide, attempt to commit genocide, or complicity in genocide. And insofar as they do engage therein, that steps are taken towards their punishment pursuant to Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Number 7, the State of Israel shall take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence related to allegations of acts within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. To that end, the State of Israel shall not act to deny or otherwise restrict access by fact-finding missions, international mandates, and other bodies to Gaza to assist in ensuring the preservation and retention of said evidence. Number 8, the State of Israel shall submit a report to the court on all measures taken to give effect to this order within 1 week, as from the date of this order, and thereafter at such regular intervals as the court shall order, until a final decision on the case is rendered by the court, and that such reports shall be published by the court, I beg your pardon. Number 9, the State of Israel shall refrain from any action and shall ensure that no action is taken which might aggravate or extend the dispute before the court or make it more difficult to resolve.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार जरूर